We had our first snowfall the other day. Not enough to warrant the use of the snowblower just yet. I know I'm getting anxious to get out there and start using this myself, but it got me thinking, now's the time to maintenance this machine. So in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to maintenance your Ariens Snowblower. And I'm going to divide this video into two categories. First, we're going to go over the engine maintenance, which is mainly going to comprise of the oil change. And the second half of this video is going to cover adjustments to the auger housing to ensure that your machine is running as optimally as possible. Now, a question you may have is this video going to cover my specific make and model? For me, I have an Ariens 28-inch Deluxe, and to answer that question, as long as you have one of these modern Ariens machines, as for the adjustments to the auger housing are pretty much going to be universal across the board, so it will apply to you. The only thing that's going to vary slightly is the amount of oil you need to add to your engine based on the cc size of your engine, which I will show you the chart and the instruction manual, so you will be able to get the proper information. So yes, this video should cover your needs. First thing you're going to want to do is open your engine service manual and look for engine oil recommendations, and you're going to find this ambient temperature chart. And what you're going to need to do, you're going to need to determine at what temperature you plan to run your machine most of the time. I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't plan to run my machine above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't need to know why they add a 30 weight oil option there. But for me, the one that applies the most is the 5W30 because I plan to be running this machine when it's below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. There's also a Celsius chart here as well. Next, if you go to the right a little bit, you'll see the engine oil capacity chart, and that's really important because that's going to tell you how much oil you need to add to your machine. Now, being that I have an Ariens 28-inch Deluxe, it has a 306cc motor, and that calls for 32 ounces of oil, which is equivalent to 1 quart. So I'm going to need 1 quart of 5W30 for my machine. I thought you were helping me out today. What's going on? But let me show you where you can find your engine displacement size. So if you go on the right side of the engine, this is where you would plug in a cord to have that electric start feature. Take a look at this chart right here. I'm going to zoom in. On this white tag on the left, if you look at the third line down, it says displacement 306cc. So just be sure to go to your machine, check what the cc size is, and then determine how much oil you need to add to your engine from there. Next thing we need to do is take the snowblower outside, run the engine for approximately 1 minute, then we'll bring it back inside and drain the oil. Alright, now that we have the machine warmed up, go around to the back of the machine, position an oil drain pan beneath this plug right here. This plug is going to be your oil drain. Now, this cable might get in the way a little bit, so what I'm going to do is I have a bungee cord, and I'm just going to lift this cord up out of the way to ensure that we don't get it soaked in oil. Now that that cord's out of the way, you're going to want to get yourself a couple of box wrenches. Now for my machine, I need a 12 and a 16. So the 12 is going to go on the inside tube, and we're just going to ensure that that doesn't unscrew from the block. Now the outside plug, that's where the 16 is going to go. So I'm going to try and do this with giving you the best camera angle possible. So I'm just going to support that 12, take this 16, crack it loose. Now I can turn that the rest of the way by hand. Now I want to keep my machine as clean as possible, so as opposed to letting that oil possibly touch the machine, I have a piece of tin foil that I cut out of something I found in the recyclables, and I'm gonna kind of create a little slide, a little chute to ensure that no oil makes contact with the machine. However, a little bit of oil in contact with the machine definitely would not harm it. So now simply unscrew the cap. We'll let this oil drain completely out of here. Additionally, I'm going to take a block and put it under the auger housing so the machine is tilted back a bit, and this should help to ensure that we get all the oil out of the engine. Now once the oil has finished draining, you can take your oil drain cap nut and you can reinstall it on this nipple, and if you have an inch-pound torque wrench laying around, the proper torque spec for this nut is 170 inch-pounds. I don't have that, so I'm just going to wing it. Alright, so if all you wanted to do was an engine oil change, what you would do from here, find your engine oil yellow cap and fill up your engine to the proper capacity based on your displacement size. However, according to the instructions, there are some grease fittings that we need to get to that are underneath a service cover on the underside of the machine. Now the instructions say that you need to turn the machine 90 degrees and have it upright. That would be the service position. However, I just tried that and the machine started leaking gas, so I guess you have to drain the gas to put the machine into its proper service position. So what I'm going to try is I'm just going to put a couple of blocks underneath the tires, and I think this should give me enough access to get to this service panel back here. So in order to remove the service cover, you're going to need to take off 6 3/8" bolts. So there's going to be 2 here, 1 right here towards the corner, and another one down past the axle right there. So take those 6 fasteners off. Now that we have that service cover off, there's going to be 3 things we need to lubricate. One is going to be this chain. So what I like to do is take a piece of cardboard, put it up in front of the chain, so when I spray this chain lube, I'm trying to ensure that I don't get any of this on the belts that are a little bit towards the front of the machine. So we'll put a little bit of lubrication on this chain here, and that's fine. Now I can remove that piece of cardboard. Now there's 2 other areas of this machine that we need to lubricate while we have this service cover off. One is going to be this slip shaft right here. So what you want to do, take some high temperature grease and just try and lubricate this slip shaft. It's probably going to get a little bit messy, but it is what it is. The service manual recommends that we do this, I believe, every 25 hours or once per season. And the final area that we need to lubricate are these gears. So what you're going to want to do is just take some high temperature grease once more and just go around these gears and try and lubricate them the best that you can. Alright, now that I have those points lubed up, I'm just going to take a shop towel and try and remove any extra grease. I got some on this shaft that didn't need it, but you know, this is going to provide some corrosion protection. Alright, now that we're done under here, we can go ahead and reinstall the service cover. But also just note, if you did need to replace a belt on your machine, you would need to take this service cover off, and I believe there's 2 belts. I believe there's one right here and one towards the front of the machine, so just try and make sure that you don't get any grease on those belts, which I got a little bit there, so I'll just wipe that off. But that's it for under here. And now we need to reinstall our service cover. Alright, next thing we need to do is remove the tires. So what I've done, I've taken the blocks that were underneath the tires and I've slid them, and now the machine is resting on this access plate. So I'm going to move the camera around to the side here and I'll show you what we need to do next. Alright, so now that I have all the weight off the tires, we're going to need to remove the tires and lubricate this shaft. So in order to remove the tires, the first thing we're going to need to do is lift up on this tab, kind of like this retention tab. And we're going to wiggle this clip upwards. So now that that's removed, you'll see we also have a seat clip back here. So I'm going to take a pair of needle nose pliers, simply pull this seat clip off the axle. Now I'm going to move the camera back a little bit. I'm just going to take this tire straight out. And this definitely needs some lubrication. I'm kind of disappointed that there's no grease fitting already built into this unit. There really should be some type of grease fitting, maybe somewhere right here, but there's nothing here. Now, you want to pay attention to what you're doing here, because what just fell is actually the keyway, and the keyway is what provides the engine power that transfers that power to the tire here. So here's the keyway sits right here. And I mean, you can just see the corrosion that's going on here, so definitely a good time to replace or lubricate this shaft rather. Okay, so we're on the right side of the machine right now, so the first thing I'm going to lubricate is actually this grease fitting right here. I've already wiped this grease fitting off, and there's only a grease fitting on the right side of the machine. So I have my Saker grease gun coupler. This thing is awesome, so I'm going to give this a couple shots of grease until it comes out. That was probably more than what it needed, so I'm going to wipe off the excess. Pretty self-explanatory. Next thing I'm going to do, where this axle shaft slides in and out of this block right here, I'm just going to take some spray lubricant, work this back and forth a little bit, and just get that lubed up. And the final thing I'm going to do, once more, I'm going to take some, well, you got to make sure you slide this washer back. That washer goes against that block, but I'm going to take some of this high temperature grease, and I'm just going to lubricate this shaft. And you got to remember, when you put the tire back on, you got to make sure you put that keyway back in. So probably a good idea to make sure that you don't really fill in that keyway with too much grease. So now that I have that lubed up, I'm going to take this keyway, put it back in the keyway slot, like so. I'm going to remove my gloves. And if you take a look at the tire here, you can see where that keyway slot is. So when you're sliding this tire back on the axle, just make sure that that keyway lines up and takes to the keyway slot. Alright, that worked out well. Now you may find that the axle shaft slid in a little bit. No matter, just take needle nose pliers or a flathead screwdriver and just pull this axle shaft back out a little bit. There we go. Next we're going to take that seat clip and reinstall the seat clip. You can just use a little hammer, tap it back in there. Pull it on with the needle nose pliers the rest of the way, like so. Ensure that it's seated. And finally, we're going to take this retainer clip and just slide it back on until it snaps. And this side's done. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side, but on the left side of the machine, there's no grease fitting. We're just going to lubricate the axle. All right, we're almost done with lubrication. So the final thing that we need to do, go to the front of the machine. If you look at the main gearbox, on either side where the auger shafts are, there's going to be a grease fitting here and a grease fitting here. So I'm going to take my grease gun coupler, latch down on this, give this a couple pumps. And I see some grease starting to come out the side here. I don't know if you can see it or not. Try not to over grease it. I see some grease coming out now. This side is good, and we are done with lubrication. Now we can remove the machine off the blocks. What you're going to want to do now is take the machine and move it over to a flat and level surface. Alright, so now I'm going to teach you how to adjust the auger housing to ensure that your machine is running as smooth and optimally as possible. So the first thing we need to do is ensure that the tire pressure is exactly the same on either side of the machine. I checked the owner's manual to see if there was a specific inflation PSI that they recommended. They said go based off the sidewall max pressure. So max pressure is 20 PSI. I'm going to set both of these tires at 15 PSI. Next, go to the front of the machine. Put the machine up on a block, carefully take a finger and feel how much cutting edge you have left. If you let this cutting edge wear down too much, you'll start grinding into your auger housing, and that could be very costly to replace. So this cutting edge feels good. I have about 3/4 to maybe an inch left of cutting edge, so this should be fine for the rest of this season. Take the machine, put it back down on the ground, get yourself a deep, what size is this, 9/16 socket, and go to your shoes. And what you're going to want to do is loosen up these shoes so they just float, go up and down. So we're going to do this on both sides of the machine. That's what you want. Do the same thing on the other side. Next, in between the auger housing and the tire, you'll find a little bolt hiding in front of the tire. So what you're going to want to do is get a 9/16 shallow socket, and you're going to want to crack this bolt a little bit loose. and I'll explain this in a moment here, but just get this loosened up. You know, you don't want to take it off all the way, but maybe get it to the point where it's just about finger tight. All right, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, so let me just explain what we did real quick and why we did it. So the first thing we did was ensure that both the tires were equally inflated. And that ensures that the engine portion of the machine is perfectly level or as flat as possible. The second thing we did is we loosened up these shoes. So these shoes can float now. So the machine is only resting on that front cutting edge. And the final thing we just did was we loosened up a set screw here, or well, a set bolt and a set bolt here. And by loosening those two set bolts, that allows you to take any twist out of the auger housing. So now, if I go lift up on the corner of this machine right now, you can see how I can pick that up and kind of twist this a little bit. That's what those two set bolts do. They allow you to adjust the auger housing to account for any twist. So when I lift this up, the tires are actually still flat on the ground. It's just the auger housing that is twisting right now. So because I have this on a flat level surface, the tires are equally inflated, the machine is not being held up by the shoes, I know for a fact right now that this machine is sitting perfectly flat on the ground. So now that I know this machine is perfectly flat on the ground, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these set bolts that I just loosened, and now I know for a fact that the machine is perfectly level. And we'll do another test in a moment here. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten up those set bolts. So now I can do a little test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back by the handlebars and I'm going to push the handlebars down, which in turn is going to raise the front of the machine up. Now what I'm paying attention to is ensuring that the machine, the auger housing, lands on the ground equally. If one side's making contact first, that's no good. Then I got to go back to those set screws or set bolts, loosen them up, and redo the process. So you may also hear those shoes coming up and down. I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about when I lift the machine up and put it back down, the auger housing should be coming down all at the same time, and it should be sitting flat on the ground. And I think that's pretty darn close to perfect. So, we're almost there. Now what we need to do now, we need to follow the manufacturer's instructions. So they don't want this cutting edge sitting completely on the ground. What they want us to do is they want us to, because I have a hard paved surface, a driveway, they want us to put 8-inch spacers underneath the cutting edge and then let the shoes sit on the ground. We'll tighten up the shoes, and at that point, the machine will be adjusted properly. Now, if you have gravel or a rough surface, I believe the manufacturer's instructions say that they want you to put a 7/8-inch spacer underneath this cutting edge and then adjust the shoes, allow the shoes to drop and tighten them up. So because I have a driveway, hard paved surface, I'm going to put 1/8-inch spacers on either side of this cutting edge, and now we'll adjust the shoes so that they sit flat on the ground. So now you can take your machine, take the cutting edge, lift up these 8-inch spacers, and now you can do the test. So when you tilt back the machine, the auger housing should come down all at the same time. Perfect. That's how it should be. Come down nice and flat and level. Of course, you know, if you're working on an uneven surface, it's going to be near impossible to get this perfect. But if you have a flat level concrete surface, that's the ideal environment to do these adjustments. So we're almost there. The final thing we need to do is just add that oil back into the engine. And again, because this is a 306cc engine, 32 ounces, 1 quart of 5W30. All right, now that we have the oil filled up, I like to start the machine for a couple seconds, shut it off, we'll check the oil level one more time, and that should be it for this video. All right, oil level is good. That's going to close out this video. that concludes today's video on how to service your Ariens Snowblower. Now, just to kind of finish off this video here, one of the biggest complaints I've had about this snowblower is with the auto turn feature. It's supposed to allow you to kind of turn this machine around, but it's really jerky when you're moving forward, and I think it does more damage than good. A lot of people on the internet have said replace these steel shoes with poly shoes. Well, these just came in the mail today, so look for a future video where I put these on the machine and test them out. We'll see if that makes a difference. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.